So the things that are interesting about Michigan State, mostly for me, come back to this idea of, again, not getting a spring practice for the first year of Mel Tucker, which is exacerbated by the timing of Mel Tucker's hire, which came right around National Signing Day. So you didn't even have the staff assembly time. You didn't even have the make the push for the February signing day time. And so like the moment that COVID hits, it feels like Mel Tucker's even still trying to put everything together. In terms of players and in terms of news and movement, I mean, like Anthony Russo, we've been talking about him like, oh, that guy's an NFL player, big body, big arm. You always talk NFL player, NFL player. And I'm not sure. I mean, he might be. I'm awful at doing this whole like NFL scouting thing. I'm much better at being able to just tell you what I saw in college, not necessarily, comparing notes with the draft nicks. I leave that to Tom Fornelli and the other experts on the CBS Sports NFL draft side of things. But if Anthony Russo at his best at Temple was a really, really good quarterback. If he comes in, that's going to be something that's interesting for me to track with the Spartans. And as I look at what happened across a 2-5 season, Sparty was, it was not a bottom fall out necessarily type situation for Michigan State, but there was just no consistency whatsoever. Again, all things that I'm willing to say, Mel Tucker hired late and it was COVID and it was the weird disjointed season. I feel like I've just got a lot of excuses on my notepad right here for Michigan State. And, I don't know if that's fair. Maybe my expectations should be higher. So as I'm all in, like, be a sponge, soak up the information, because I don't feel like I've got my hands around this Michigan State team at all.
You're not alone. There's nothing I think that we could really look at from that season last year, and you can take things away from it, but I just don't think you should read too much into depth because of all the things you talked about. It's not just the fact that it was a COVID season that tossed everything on its head. It's the time when Mel Tucker was hired, when that coaching staff was brought in, how little time they had to work with those guys before the season started. I mean, it was, in a way, it felt like when I was watching Michigan State games, I was watching their spring practice. In a lot of ways, this was a team that didn't really have a great idea of what it was trying to do yet, because it just hadn't had the time to figure things out. So the results, I don't read too much in. Just going into 2021, regardless of the situation, and this has been the case at Michigan State the last few years, the offensive line has been bad. Quarterback play has been worse. Those are two things that until they improve, it's hard to see this Michigan State team being the same kind of team that in those glory D'Antonio years, when they were reaching the playoff, when they were reaching Big Ten title games, and they were winning the division. It's been a trend the last few years. It's not just last year with Mel Tucker and a COVID year and everybody coming in late. So I think if I'm Mel Tucker on offense, those are two things that I really have to worry about fixing, because, in the last few years, the Spartans have had some pretty decent talent at the receiver position. They just haven't had a quarterback capable of getting the ball to them on an even semi-consistent basis, let alone consistent. And I think defensively, there's still it's not what it used to be. I think that there's still talent there, and I think that there's still plenty capable of playing good defense, particularly in the Big Ten, although I don't see it being a high-end kind of really ultimate ceiling kind of defense. I think it could be a solid, won't hurt us, will keep us in games kind of unit if the offense can catch up. So for me this spring, if I'm a Spartans fan, I'm not coming into the year with the highest of expectations. I just want to see improvement, knowing that Mel Tucker, now that he's had a full year really to get ready for his first spring practice, we could see some of the things that Mel Tucker we saw at Colorado, because we saw some positive signs during Tucker's first year with the Buffs for giving us reason to think maybe going forward that team could be heading in the right direction under Tucker before he left. So I'm hoping that I see some of that with Michigan State this year. But again, I don't know what the quarterback situation is. Peyton Thorne, I know, played a little bit last year, but He wasn't great, but again, he was a freshman. I know that they have a 3-star kid in their 2021 class in Hampton Fay who is enrolled and who is there this spring. Maybe he's going to get some reps and able to take over the job because, again, I don't see a entrenched starter there. So even a 3-star freshman, I think, has a legitimate shot to win that job if he plays well enough.
I dug a lot on Michigan State this morning, and I'm kind of in on this team as far as what they're doing for the long term. Short term, I don't know. I know to start the year, I thought Mel Tucker was going to be a disaster given the lack of time that he had with his team and the way they played in their first couple games. Like, they just kept trying to quote unquote establish the run against Rutgers and really lost that game in part because of how how Tucker's offense called the game. They just set themselves up for 3rd and 8 over and over again because they couldn't run the ball. Now, like, for the first couple of weeks, they were really, really bad as far as what they were calling on offense. Then they opened it up a little bit, and they actually finished 111th in standard down run rate, which is a major improvement over where they were, prior. I like the receivers on this team a whole lot. Russo is kind of a confusing read to me because if you look at some of his individual stats, they're not that bad, right? I mean, last year he was 68% completions, but then he's 9-6 touchdown to pick and 82% catchable, which is fine. But their passing offense was outside the top 100 if you adjust for opponents. So I don't really know what they're getting in Russo. I can see some good. I can see some bad. I think their receivers are really pretty damn good. Their run game was so bad, and they tried to use it so much, at least in the first kind of half of the year. I mean, guys, here's their numbers. Remember, there's only 127 teams playing, right? Because we had 3 didn't play. Success rate rushing, 125th. Marginal efficiency, 125th. Marginal explosiveness, 125th. Opportunity rate, 124th. We're getting better, right? Power success rate, 112th. Stuff rate allowed, 124th. They couldn't run the ball to save their life, but they tried to do it a lot. I think it'll be Russo because I can't see a defensive-minded head coach turning it over to a true freshman. That's just not how defensive coordinators are wired, I think. But, man, my questions about this team. So they were 109th on offense last year and 12th in defense. That defense was sneaky pretty good, and the offense put it in some horrendous situations. I mean, just consistently turning the ball over in their own end and never getting first downs, things which hurt our defense. They lost a ton. I was looking at their transfer list, and they brought in a lot of dudes who Mel Tucker would have scouted when he was at Georgia or when he was at Colorado, guys who are athletic. But that's a boatload of transfers to bring in. To me, it says they got a lot of holes to fill in this defense. Sorry for running long there.
Then going back to Russo, I forgot to mention him as part of it. You know who he honestly reminds me of from watching him at Temple? And I don't know how Michigan State fans will have to feel about this because I remember when that transfer was announced, it just made me laugh. He kind of reminds me of Brian Lewerke, except he doesn't have as strong as an arm, but he thinks he has a stronger arm. You know what I mean? Anthony Russo takes shots downfield in that Temple offense last year, and I was just like
Chad Kelly style.
Yeah, it's buddy, that is not there. That is not your game. And I just feel like that's who Anthony Russo is.
It's like your buddy with who tries to carry at 250 over water. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just bummed we're not going to see Fornelli's favorite quarterback, Rocky Lombardi, anymore, because I remember Fornelli's tweets about him. That was incredible. I'm worried about this program, and has nothing to do with Mel Tucker. It's almost like, if you're a Michigan State fan, I think you might have a whole new appreciation for what Mark D'Antonio accomplished while he was there. Of all the teams you look at, because clearly everybody's chasing Ohio State, right, in the Big Ten. Of all the teams we've talked about so far, like Penn State, maybe there's an opportunity to close that gap. Michigan, maybe there's an opportunity to close that gap. Michigan State, who had closed that gap. I mean, they, and had beaten them. They had a lot of success against Michigan. I'm worried about it. Now, Mel Tucker, I think wisely is going through the transfer portal. He's got 7 coming in, including Russo, maybe even adding more. So I think that's a smart move to try to change. You mentioned all the defensive starters they lost off a defense that was pretty good, but I think this is a really tough job. I think this is a tough place to win. And I think it takes a unique individual, a unique recruiting tactic to take that chip on the shoulder, and nobody played it up better than D'Antonio. You got to have a unique individual you get in there that can kind of build that us against the world. I mean, have you guys been to East Lansing? It's not the best place out there. It's not the prettiest. The weather's not that great. It's a little tough. And I worry about them from a bigger picture. Like if you look at the records before, yes, they were sprinkled in there, a couple 10-win seasons here and there, but the majority of the time it was 7 wins, 8 wins. To me, that feels like the direction Michigan State is going in.
The Michigan State campus is lovely.
Is it?
Yeah.
Most college campuses are. Remember that one time when a colleague was starting to like really brag about their alma mater and like how lovely the campus was? And we were like, well, how many campuses have you been to? And a lot of college campuses are built up because they're trying to get you to come there. They want your tuition money. They like have invested in making it look pretty.
I'll just say
there. I've never been to East Lansing in the summer. Maybe it's beautiful.
East Lansing in the fall when the trees are changing color. It's pretty nice.
Okay.
Do you think what D'Antonio did would work in today's Big Ten nearly as well? Like, I don't know if this defense pounded out, try to win games in the mid to high 20s. Like now that we've seen college football become so much more explosive, like that's what makes it harder too. Is like you could be just as good as D'Antonio's teams were, and not sniff the East title, given what Ohio State's doing and what
you could win the West.
Evolving to.
You could win the West.
Yeah.
Remember, I think of what Michigan State did defensively in like the D'Antonio Narduzzi era, and I think of what Alabama did to Ohio State with the RPOs just against cover 3 all damn day long, getting anything they wanted.
Good point.
Yeah.